Spotlight. Right. So I just wanted to talk about how I view sound, and that I tend to categorize them into three different types. Background sounds, ambient sounds, that you can't really determine what's there, but you know you've got a space, it's filling a sound space. I'm sure you all know these things really yourself, but just to clarify. Habitats, where you're recording a big habitat full of birds, in my case, most of the time, cuckoos and things, or, well, no, not cuckoos. So habitats, lots of birds, lots of everything. And then species is the cuckoo, or spot sounds, you're picking up one particular thing. And some of you saw me carry this in. So this is a parabolic reflector. I use an Omni mic in here. In fact, I use a DPA, tiny thing to keep it as light as possible. And that also gives me quite a nice general sound, as well as giving me the increased on-axis sounds from any spot things, but you also get a lot of low frequency as well. So I find that very useful, but different people use, everybody's got their own preference for that. This is a Tilinga. So it's flexible. So the microphone goes in there, you put it at the focus of this, you play with it until you get the sensitivity right, and then I always use it in mono. Some people put stereo mics in them, but I tend to, you know, if you're doing a spot sound, it's a spot sound, it's mono. Yeah, so that's what I tend to do. So that's what the nightjars were recorded on, and nightingales and what have you. But if you're trying to get ambience, then you're going to use something else. And I've got 3 rigs that I use, 2 of which are huge. And then this one is probably the best one. So I started out using this one. So this is the first one that I used for ambient sounds. And this is not a shotgun mic. It looks like a shotgun mic, but it's actually a spaced Omni pair. So you use it that way around. Okay. So this is a Chris Watson design, and I rang up his engineer, Chris Wolf at Ryco, and just said, can you make me one of those that Chris has got? And he said, yeah, I'll go. Okay. And so, and then I modified it. Usually the jacks come out to the bottom, but I put the jacks in the baffle in the middle. So we've basically got 2 DPA microphones, 4060s, Tyclec mics, with the caps off, spaced in an array. And this, I was talking about this a moment ago. This has been used and compared with the Sandfield arrays, the guy who borrowed this from me said he preferred the sound of this, even though it was just stereo, to the Sandfield arrays. Even though they gave him the spatial stuff, he thought the quality was just too harsh in comparison. So this is a really nice rig for getting ambient, the last 2, the first 2, ambient and habitat sounds. And the great thing about it, of course, it's also particularly resistant to moisture. So when I wanted you wouldn't have heard them, but in the night wire piece, I managed to record a storm on the beach at Dunwich. I wanted nightjars and storm, but I couldn't find the nightjars, so I got the storm anyway. And I went down to the beach at Dunwich and parked the van close to the beach and put this on a 30-meter cable on the beach, and it sat there for 3 hours in a thunderstorm. And it was still working at the end of it, you know. So it's just quite phenomenal, really. I mean, it had the fur on and stuff, but that's the spaced Omni pair, and that's what I started with. And then I got this. So this is a really neat setup, again built by Chris Wolf for me. And this is a double MS sound setup, so you can actually record surround sound. You can decode this. It's 3 microphones, 2 cardioids pointing in opposite directions, and a figure of 8. And these are Sherp's microphones. So these cost me an arm and a leg. I did a project and spent the entire budget on the microphones, but ever since they've earned me so much money because I use them for classical music recording as well. They are generally the go-to mics for the BBC and stuff, and they're just phenomenal. And they've also gone up in price. So they're actually worth more now than I paid for them, which is, you don't do that with tech normally, but with these microphones, that's what's happened. So here you've got a microphone pointing in that direction, and a microphone pointing that direction, and then a figure of 8 getting the side. And so by adding and subtracting the figure of 8 to this microphone, you get a stereo image over here. And by adding and subtracting the figure of 8 microphone to this one, you get a stereo image here. So and you get quad. Now you can actually also get software to decode it into 5.1, 7.1, and what have you if you want to. But I tend to stick with quad when I'm using this. You tend to just, and I tend to do it manually as well. I tend to take the figure of 8 and set that about 3 decibels lower than the cardioids and pan them. You pan it left and then invert the phase and pan it right and get your stereo image. These ones are not very directional. They are just normal cardioids. Yeah, you can see the pattern on top. Yeah, so they give you a pretty good all-round sound, but when you've mixed that together, you can get more, hypercardioid versions as well. And this is the rig that I took to Bath and showed Chris Watson, and he said, they won't get the bass sound and the reflections and stuff off this thing. And I said, well, you have a listen. And he had a listen. He said, that's amazing. And he went out and bought a set. So there you go. So the beautiful little comm box on here as well. Yeah, and it connects to the rig with a 7-pin XLR. I've got 50 meter and 20 meter XLR cables, single cables. So they pull 3 mics back to 70 meters at the max. And then you break those out into 3-pin XLRs, and you've got your 3 channels to go in your rig. So the cables come from Sherps as well, and they cost an arm and a leg. It's another thing that Chris Watson's got me spending money on, because he lent me his on Orford, and I said, oh, I've got to have those. So I don't have to sleep next to the gear. So anyway, I'll put that back together. So, and then this is a really old rig, but this is actually a shotgun rig. So this has got a Sennheiser MKH60, old school short shotgun mic in it. But I had an MKH30 for years and waiting till I could afford the MKH60. And then of course they released new microphones, and these are old now, and they've got, it's a massive thing, isn't it? But I'm really proud of this because I bought this Rycote soft shield for 30 quid secondhand. It was in a football stadium, and so I think, but then one of the problems with it is I've bodged it up, one of the bolts. I can't actually take this one apart and show you, but there's basically a proper shotgun mic in there. And then I use that as a mid-side, so you've got a nice stereo image. This one's also very good in the wet, and you wouldn't take the Sherps to a rainforest, they tell me. Not that I've ever had the chance to go to a rainforest, but these is what you use in the rainforest. And so, and these, I really love the sound from this rig, and it's my favorite drop rig if I'm wanting to get that habitat of a marsh or something like that. I'll stick that out with my old recorder. Nowadays, I tend to use the Sound Devices MixPre 6. I'm still on version 1 without the 32-bit float, for those that know. But my old rig was I bought a Sound Devices 744 to use with these, and I tend to drop that with this and just leave it, and it's just a total bomb-proof rig that you can just leave out in the marshes, and it will just give you a recording until the batteries go flat, and yeah, it's really good. The only thing is, sometimes when I did the recordings at Western Heath, I stuck that out in the woods, and I put a patteran down, a marker, so I could find it. I came off the path, went round, and I put the patteran down. Later on, I heard the warden come round with his kids, and I remember hearing them talk something about stick, you know, here's a nice stick. They'd nicked my patteran. And I had to go back and try and find my microphones without a marker to know where I'd gone off and put it. I was hunting up and down in the dark. It was getting darker and darker, and I still couldn't find it. And then eventually I saw some lights, and I'd actually left the display on enough to actually see the lights through the darkness. It got dark enough to see the light display, and I got it back. So that's that. So I've also got into the habit of making things, because part of the time I teach in schools, and in a school 2 days a week, and I've started making sort of microphones so that people can record outside. And I started out with this version, so it's all got tangled up. So this is a £1.50 microphone from China in a piece of garden mesh, and with some tights over it, and on a Sainsbury's coat hanger, perfect Sainsbury's coat hanger. And this gives you an amazing rig, actually, because in there you've got a rubber grommet with the microphone in it, right? You've got garden mesh. So this is all pence, you know, the Sainsbury's coat hanger you blag out of the stores and go say, I'm doing this project, can I have a few? And they give you a stack. And this gives you a windproof rig, and the microphone that I buy for this has a 4-pole connector on, so you can plug it straight into phones that have phone connectors, right? So obviously it's no good for the iPhone anymore, except that you can get adapters to do it. So you can plug in a lightning to 4-pole converter. They're only about 14 quid. Or you can get cheap ones for £5, but I wouldn't trust them. So this is a windproof rig, so that you can record outside, so that kids, and I do workshops for Suffolk Wildlife Trust on these, and they can make these in the workshop and then take them out with their phones and record things. And you can put an adapter on the 4-pole to turn it to 3-pole and put it into a camera or something like that if you want to. So that's that. And then I adapted the process to making a parabolic. I call this a pottabolic. And this is a wide-brimmed flower pot. It conveniently has holes in the bottom so you can get wires in and out of it. You have to make a nice plywood disc at the bottom, which screws into a handle that you fashion out of wood. You whiz these up on the jigsaw, and then you get the kids to sand it off so it feels nice in the hand. So they get a little job sanding it, but they don't have to cut it, and then you pre-cut these circular bits and drill them, because that's a bit tricky. Screw it together, stick some garden mesh on there with a grommet in, and you can do the same thing as that, but you can put some more fur over it. I found out that you could get this fur from Rycote. This is genuine Rycote fur. And when I first bought it, they sold me a little piece like that for 15 quid or something. But now they don't sell it that way anymore. They sell you a metre off the roll, and the roll is 1.5 metres wide. So you get 1.5 square metres of Rycote material for 50 quid plus VAT plus delivery. And you can make 25 of these pieces out of that. So these cost 3 quid each, and you can cover up your garden mesh with genuine Rycote softy fur. And I just love this, because it's just the best, you know, mix of low tech, high tech, but the pièce de résistance, where are we, is this. So I do walking, and I've told you about my Spaced Omni pair, this one. I want this rig, is a homemade garden mesh rig, but in it is a pair of Omni DPA 4060s, so the same as that rig, but just a bit narrower, and a DPA MMA -A, I think, to be fair. And that's what it looks like. And this is my holy grail for walking, because I put my hips out trying to carry all my recorder gear when I walked across Wales in that picture. And this enables me to take my phone. I've got a quad lock case on here, so I can literally put that on there, plug that in there. That's my video rig or my sound recording rig. So I've got spaced Omni pair. They're a bit narrow, but it's good, and I can carry that. That weighs 300 grams. It's even got monitoring in it. I took a bass from an Apple bass, took the weight out and stuck it inside here as well. So I don't know if it's in that version of the picture, because I made one without and then added it. But this little device here, that's 50 millimeters across, 5 centimeters. It weighs about 50 grams. And it takes the dots from the DPAs straight onto those gold connectors and then comes out as a USB straight into your phone. And all the power comes from your phone. So that DPA module is completely sealed. And there's a version of that, well, they tell me it's the same one, is on Mars at the moment on the rover. Is it Perseverance, this current one? Yeah, the DPA dual microphones for the Mars Explorer things, but they use that module on it. So I just think that's really cool. And it's just, I mean, it's just so, you can just carry this all day. You know, and you can film with it, or you can just use your sound recorder and record with it and take sounds. So that's my holy grail. I've been trying to get something like this for years. And I mean, it lives in this bag. And when I go out for a walk, I just throw that in, and I've got a sound kit. And the quality of this is broadcast quality, you know. And the video off the phone, this is an iPhone 12, is just totally ridiculously good. So, yeah, always got. I mean, the best camera is the one you have with you, isn't it? Yeah. So that's my holy grail. So. So so that's kind of my tech, and I'm sure you have lots of questions. So far away.
How did you start into all this?
How did I start? So, as I said at the beginning, I started composing music for dance, and that's where I started getting to the tech. And I initially MIDI stuff, and then electroacoustic, and then to do electroacoustic music, you wanted to sample things. So I started getting sampling material. Initially, it was Tandy tie-clip mics and a mini disc. Actually, did I have the DAT recorder first? A digital audio tape recorder, and then mini discs as well. Probably had the mini disc first, actually. And then I bought, you know, slightly better Soundman binaural microphones. Those, and I've still got those in another rig. Oh, actually, I've got something else to show you. I forgot. But and then I just gradually increased. When I was at UEA, I could borrow the Neumann microphones, so I had really good microphones, but they weren't mine. And you do sampling workshops to get sounds which you could then manipulate and change. You know, you have a baby, so you record the baby and the rattles and stuff, and that all goes into your electroacoustic music. You know, that's what everybody does. It's so corny. But you do go through that. And then I just started recording outside. So how did I get into outdoor recording? The first big project I did was Ebb and Flow for what was Suffolk Coastal District Council. They did a huge project at and on the River Ald, or going down from Snape down to the sea, and they did lots of archaeological stuff. They did a huge oral project, and they asked me to make a sound piece going down to the sea, and that's what the shirts were bought for. So I've been doing proper pro quality sound recording outdoors, I guess, for 15 years or so, yeah. And then you just gradually, I'm really happy with the rigs. There's not really much I lust after anymore in terms of stuff, you know, because I really feel like I've got a microphone rig for everything, and I never take them apart. except to show you. But I mean, the only thing I take apart is the chirps. When I go and do classical recordings, I take the mics out and put them in microphone stands and things. But otherwise, they tend to stay ready to go and just, and what have you. But one of the things I would say is that you can go for the spaced omni pair a bit cheaper if you want to. There is a device made by Rode, which is this thing here. It's the SC6-L. That really rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? But this does the same thing, similar thing to the others. You take a standard Rode tie-click mic. They're about 50 quid. And you can buy this as a kit where you get two matched microphones. But you take two tie-click microphones and plug them in here. And then the other end is a lightning plug to go straight in your phone. Yeah, and that's about 200 quid worth, whereas the one before, where am I? Can't do this upside down. No, it doesn't want to go. Right, so yeah, that one. I looked before I came. These are 500 euros or so. Just that, and then the DPAs themselves are 350-ish, I think. So there's £1,000 in my Holy Grail rig, whereas this is £200. So if you want to play around with spaced omni pairs, then this is a good place to start. Yeah, and you can build yourself a rig with garden mesh. And fashion some kind of handle. And if you drop me a line, I've got loads of fur sitting there waiting for the next workshop, because the workshops all stopped with COVID, didn't they? So I've got all this fur and no workshops. I've got 2 workshops to run for Suffolk Wildlife Trust when they finally decide they can go back indoors instead of just doing it out in the marshes. So anyway, so there you go. That's how I got into, that's a long answer to your question. So.
When you produced the sound for the films, how many audio tracks did you superimpose over to get that? It wasn't just a single recording of the multitude of birds.
No, the mix is quite complex, especially if you're doing surround sound, because you have to group your tracks and you end up with, you decode it and you end up with 4 tracks. So you've got front, left, right, rear, left, right. You group them as 4 tracks and then they move around together and you can shorten or lengthen them and play around with them. I'm a bit of an oddball. I use a program called Digital Performer to do all my editing in, which nobody over this side of the Atlantic has ever heard of, but it's because I started, an American friend of mine gave me a copy of Performer before it went digital 30 years ago, and I've just always used it. And I find, use what you know. I use Logic as well. The thing that's really works for me in a project is that Digital Performer will have multiple sequences inside a project. So you load all your sounds into a project, you've got this huge library of sounds, you can mix a few into a sequence, you can then keep that sequence in your chunks and then make another sequence of all your sounds in chunks. You can even then assemble them in songs. They use that, because they're thinking verse, chorus, bridge, So you can then assemble your soundtracks roughly using chunks in the song, and you can actually hear what it sounds like, and you've got all this multiple stuff, or you can bounce it down as another stereo track and then put that in another mix, and it just enables you to keep everything together. And I haven't found another piece of software, probably Nuendo does it, because that's really high end. So Digital Performer was fairly affordable. Well, the upgrades are about 160, 170 quid, but I don't know how much it costs new. There's a cross grade for 300 quid or something. Anyway, so yes, lots of tracks. You get lots of tracks, but a lot of the time it's actually just crossfading between mixes. Sometimes it's superimposed 2 layers of mixes, but a lot of the time it's actually mixing the ambient sound or the habitat and then putting some spot sounds into it. It's making it flow. It's making it sound good. I don't like to make it too complicated and make it sound like unreal. Yeah, so I will try and keep it so that what you're hearing is just one recording and one space if I can, if it's good enough. If I do anything, it's adding spot sounds in, but it does get quite complex doing the mixing. Yeah.
How much of a problem do you get despite having the dead cat on there because the whistling effect? Do you find that you get any problems at all there? Because I didn't notice anything. The video analog was still.
Yeah, there's well, it was really windy at when I did the sunrise in the midwinter solstice. The pagodas was really windy. There's a lot of wind on there. I had to filter it because it's really roaring, and you lost some of the detail of the birds and things. But there's no wind getting into the microphones at all. What's interesting is you need the dead cat. So which microphone I used? I used this one there, so the shirts were out there. And also these, did take the parabolic, but in the end I didn't use it, partly because one of the cables was whacking on it in the wind, and so it spoiled the recording. So this cage with this means you don't get any, what you get if you don't use this, all right, is you get wind noise from the serrations on this. When the wind picks up, you actually get physical noise appearing on your microphones. And so this means that you don't get noise from the wind hitting the cage, yeah, because it's covered over. It also means that you don't get them for a limited amount of time anyway, you don't get rain noises on it. When I used the Space Omni pair on the beach at Dunwich, by the end of it, it was so saturated you could hear the rain hitting the cage. But yeah, that was just part of the joy. That and the fact that I was tucked up in the van listening on headphones, not actually in the rain. So yeah, so the dead cats are really, really useful. And I don't, with this and this, you know, with enough space in here, you don't get wind noise. Yeah. But the key thing with wind noise is that what you're trying to do is you're trying to disrupt the force of that wind, because what you don't want is you don't want the wind to get to the microphone and move the diaphragm physically. That's the point. Because if the sound you're hoping the sound moves the diaphragm, and that's a very gentle thing. What you don't want is strong wind hitting the diaphragm and moving it physically, and that's where your noise comes from. So you have to create space, and you have to, this then disrupts the wind enough so that when it gets inside, it's turbulent and can't get across that gap. So that gap inside the wind that is crucial. So when you just use these small furry bits over microphones outside, you don't have enough gap to protect your microphones enough. You need to create, it's that air gap in there, the empty space is the key. That's what stops you getting wind noise, yeah? After the wind has hit a barrier, all right? This helps, and obviously, so on this one here, yeah, that's why I used the tights, yeah, to cover this, because, well, partly because it also helps the spiky bits on the garden mesh not get to the fur. But these work quite well. I did a test with this and on my DPA Space Omnis and went out for a walk, just holding them both together, so they got the same wind. And I was quite impressed. In a 25-mile-an-hour winds, I wasn't getting any wind noise on this microphone either. So it works. This rig quite well, but there's not much space in there. Do you want to? You can pass those ones around. So you can't see anything of that one. No, but there is enough to deal with most. I don't know if I can get this off. Oh, here we go. It's not that.
You work with television.
No, I hate film. Sorry. What would I say? It's not that I'm. I've done a few jobs as a sound man on a film crew, but it's like, it's all about the film, isn't it? And not about your sound. And they only know about you if you've done it wrong. And I want to be an artist and I want to make something that's mine. And I tend to just control the whole thing. So I tend not to do location sound for anybody else. Unless it's just, they want like, they put a piano out on the marshes at Snape and said, can you go out and record it? So I did that and gave them the soundtrack. But I mean, again, that's just me doing all the sound and then giving that for the film. But generally speaking, I stick to doing my projects. Yeah. Just a control freak, really.
What do you use to normally record the sound?
Okay. I did say, but I'll show. I've got nowadays. My favourite is this. I don't know if you can see it. Really, is a sound devices. This is the Mix Pre 6. This replaced my sound devices 744. The sound devices 744 cost £3 and this cost just over £1 and I think they're even cheaper now. But for my purposes, it's good enough. So, sorry. The build quality of the 744 is better though. You can get the XLRs out easier. So, but there's the, it's nice and neat and tidy. This is on version 2 now. It's got 32-bit float, which means you never have to set the levels because whatever you record won't be distorted and you can always boost it in post. So, but this is a 24-bit recorder. And it's got four. Love it, right. It's got 4 XLR inputs and then it's got a mini jack so you can bang another 2 in. And I quite often use this if I'm recording in the church, if I'm doing live streaming or something. This is actually really quite handy because it gives you 4 XLR phantom power connections. Plus I've got a Sound Devices 302 mixer, which I can use to decode the mid side. So I stick a mid side up for the general ambience of the church and pull that through the 302 into the mini jack 5 and 6 channels. And then I've still got 4 channels for the spot mics on the violins and the pianos and things like that. So it's quite handy. And it's just this and the 302 is the same size, it sits on top. And you've got this 6-channel recording setup, and it's really tiny. The only thing is I don't trust the USB connection to the computer very much. It dropped once on me in the middle of a live stream. So I tend to now use the mini jack, because I can trust it, even though it's rinky-dink compared with using proper USB. If you're using live streams stuff, it doesn't really matter if it's mini jack, and it means it doesn't disappear from OBS. So, if you want details of how to build these, they're on my website. So if you go to mikechallis.com, one of the pages has got some details on it. So, so this is my website. And if you go to making, should mirror the screen now. So that's the Holy Grail. That top one is making of the that's that one, right? And that's the potobolic and that's the windproof that you're holding. So there's the instructions on how to build it. Okay, so you can if you want to watch any of the films again, there's the Pagodas is there, and Nightwire is there. Washington Heath. That's the film. So, right. Well, that's interesting. It came out of the computer. Anyway, so that's my website, and you feel free to go and see it. And sort of say, if you go to that making thing, there's details of all various things that I've made. The potobolic is there too. Oh, that's something else. Yeah, that's making the potobolic.
Right. Has anybody got any more questions? Right, well, in that case, I'll just say thank you very much, Mike. It's been a fascinating topic. We're all sort of definitely looking at all your kit with jealousy. And,
You always do.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all part of the COVID tests now, isn't it? And thank you very much for coming, and please keep in touch.
Yeah.
And we look forward to seeing you at another point in our programme in the future.
Okay.
So
thank you very much. Thank you for
next
asking
week
me.
we've got the members bring a film night, and then the week after that is recording audio in difficult circumstances, rather apt for the talk that we've actually had tonight. And then following that is the Christmas party. So I look forward to seeing all of you next week. If not in person, then hopefully we can get the online working as well. Okay? We'll start clearing away, shall we?